Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, I am pleased, honored, if you will, to be joined by the hosts, plural, of America's newest movie podcast sensation, sweeping the country. Or maybe that's just in my mind because I've fallen in love with this show. Here's the best compliment I can give these guys before I actually say their names. 2 episodes in, I have wanted neither episode to end. And the second episode, which I just finished listening to about 2 hours ago, was about 2 hours long, and I didn't want it to end. Who should I say first? Well, it's, you know what, Andrew, he's put in the time. He's my producer. Andrew Claudio.
Yay, I get top billing on the pod that I spend more time on in my entire life. Thank you, John.
And joining him, well, you introduce yourself. You speak first on final review, so it's only fitting that I introduce you first here. And joining him and me, my good buddy, Bernard Ozarowski. Hello, sir.
Hey there, film and Knicks fans.
How you doing?
So we're going to talk Knicks, obviously, because it's a Knicks podcast. We always figure out a way to talk some Knicks, but I do want to start with your guys' podcast. So for anybody listening to the show who doesn't know, I guess I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson. So Andrew Claudio produces this show. He has also hosted several podcasts in his life. And I'm just going to say it. I think this is the best one. I hope you don't. No shade.
As far as hosting, it's the one that I've absolutely put the most work into. This is no disrespect to anything I ever did at Gotham Sports Network or any episode of Final Score, but Oz and I went into the winter of last year with an idea and kept pushing it off, like when we should do it, when I'll be free to do it, when I can really commit to what this will sound like and we can work on an idea. And then even when we thought we had it, we kept working at it and kept going through demos and segment ideas and the format changes. This is a labor of love, and I really think we've landed on something. I'm not offended at all if you say that this is the best thing I've ever done.
Look, we had our broken spines that we had to magically recuperate and teleport back to Gotham to put on our podcast.
That's Dark Knight Rises.
I know.
That's different. I agree with you on that movie.
Okay, we'll get right into it. My only complaint about the episode, so for anybody who hasn't heard, the podcast is called Final Review. 2 episodes in. First episode was Social Network. Second episode, Dark Knight. Third episode, I'm not going to say, but if you want to know what it is, listen to the music at the end of the last episode. So there was no mention of Dark Knight Rises on a 2-hour podcast about Dark Knight. I just at least wanted a cursory mention about that movie. That's all I just want to say.
You know what? This is like the unofficial sequel to that episode at this point. And I'll say, I like The Dark Knight Rises.
I know you do.
Oh, do you?
I do. I think it's good.
So do I.
I think it leans into the superhero bullshit in a way that The Dark Knight is afraid to. Agreed. Where The Dark Knight feels like it has to do it. And The Dark Knight Rises is like, you know what? We're a dumb fucking superhero movie. Let's have a little fun with it. And I respect that. And Tom Hardy is just going for it. I don't know what he's doing, but it's fun.
You guys spent 2 hours praising justifiably Heath Ledger's performance as Joker. I didn't think there was, I felt bad for Hardy being the one who's has to essentially, it's the guy who starts for the shooting guard for the Chicago Bulls after Michael Jordan retires. And I thought he showed up and he did his thing and he made it, whatever. It was fun. What I love about the pod is I think what people, consumers of content, as we all are, in addition to being producers of content, is what's the thing that gets us all to click when we're scrolling? What's the thing that catches your attention? It's lists. And you managed to have a podcast literally chock full of lists, and yet it feels completely and totally authentic in the execution and how you guys do it. And I'm not going to ask you to be like, yeah, that was exactly how, but whatever got you to the point where this is where the podcast is, it's a slam dunk.
Thank you.
So that's it. That's my compliment.
Yeah.
That's really kind, actually.
In the compliments we've been getting this week, that I think the format is the people recognizing the format and how it works has been the coolest thing. Yeah, I have no comment on your Dark Knight Rises takes. First of all, it's a movie we're never going to do on Final Review. I already am vetoing any suggestion of doing it in Final Review.
Who's the Nick that we'll start our tie-in before I get to my larger point about basketball criticism or basketball analysis and film criticism, which I'm really curious to hear your takes on. Let's compare each of these 3 Nolan movies to a Nick. It doesn't have to be a current Nick. It could be a past Nick. Okay. I think the easiest one.
Oh, I already know where you're going, and I already know where I'm going to stand on this side of the fence. Go ahead.
You think I'm going to compare Melo to Dark Knight?
Yes, something is beloved by many, but you two can't seem to find the joy in.
First of all,
here we go.
Okay, this is now what this pod is.
Yes.
This is me taking a stand against you, sir. You trying to pigeonhole me as someone who dislikes and dishonors the memory and the great legacy of one Carmelo Anthony in a Knicks uniform.
Fine. Prove me wrong. Go ahead. Change my mind. I'm sitting at the table with the sign, John.
I've been on record in if not our text chain, then the text chain that I have longer running text chain I have with Oz and Yash. Mm-hmm. Carmelo Anthony's first ballot Hall of Famer, right? Bernard, am I saying any lie?
That's
obvious. True. You first said that.
First ballot Hall of Famer, all-time great player. I think he has a good argument for being a top 50 player ever. I would have to really sit down and quibble with but he's in the conversation for being in the top 50 ever. He's the greatest Knick since Patrick Ewing. There's no question about that. And I think he was a great Knick. I think there's an argument for retiring his jersey. Even though he'd more seasons than not, he didn't win here. I don't think it was all his fault. My only thing with him is that I've been unwilling to be as effusive as like Carmelo Anthony was the second coming, when to me, in this city, despite the fact that we've not done much winning in a very long time, you do need to achieve some modicum of success in the postseason. And he won one playoff series. Is that his fault? No, it's probably not his fault. But like, that's my only is that unreasonable? It's like me saying RJ Barrett's over under for All-Star appearances is 2.5, and then me being labeled a hater of RJ Barrett for taking that stance. Come on.
First of all, once again, why do you hate RJ Barrett? But we do not have to get into that on this podcast. I think everything you've said, I agree with. And ironically, Oz was with me with Schwinn when Schwinn said top 60. And I was like, I'd actually go lower than that.
I think I had the highest rating. I was like clearly in the back of the top 50. And you guys both cracked me back on that. And I'm the hater. So
I think Carmelo Anthony is one of the more gifted scorers this sport has ever seen. And as we've seen throughout this decade and parts of last decade, although last decade you could get away with just a pure scorer being your best player and finding role players around him and you'd be successful. Allen Iverson being the best example of that. Made a finals because the league was so stretched out in their talent that all you needed was a dominant scorer and you'd be fine. And as the league progressed and as talent became more of a surplus in this league, you needed a big 2. You needed a big 3. And Melo's best 2 and 3 were J.R. Smith and Tyson Chandler and like half a year of Jason Kidd. And they're like, I'm more blame management for that. And I think a lot of the blame for Melo's shortcomings when he came here and then what happened after that are, in my opinion, although I've come to a realization I'm just in the minority. I am in the minority on what happened with the trade and how detrimental it was. And then, what happened when Phil Jackson took over. That's all. I just think he gets scapegoated as like this dark era and what Donnie Walsh's plan being ruined, even though Donnie Walsh spent 2 years sitting on cap space so he can get LeBron and then didn't. Wow.
So, shots fired.
I'm sorry.
You're sitting probably enjoying a cocktail in Indiana right now, and you're just shrapnel.
I'm sorry, but the guy, and all we have to hear is that Donnie Walsh was infatuated by Steph Curry. And it was like, it was a shame that we dropped one spot too far. How about you trade up, Donnie? How about you get a little proactive instead of waiting for something to happen, just like what happened in the summer of 2010, when you walked away with Amari Stoudemire, called it a victory, had this fan base convinced that 4 people that to this day have never made an all-star team are the assets that would have changed the Knicks if we didn't trade for Carmelo. And yet, here we are. I get what you guys are going to say about asset management, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious that people are like,
I've never seen you this fired up.
We could have traded for Chris Paul. Yeah, because I associate playoff success with trading for Chris Paul. That's exactly what happened.
Hold on, we're going off the
multiple arguments being on. Melo deserves his flowers, and I'm glad Macri is finally giving it.
I think, and Bernard, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I guess first of all, on the top 50 thing. The original top 50 list the NBA made, I guess, a little over 20 years ago now. My God, I am old. Dominique Wilkins was left off that, and it was very controversial at the time. People, I think, were in agreement that he was like 51, right? 45, 51. Carmelo Anthony's kind of the modern day Dominique Wilkins, except Dominique Wilkins sadly kind of had a little bit more playoff success, although he never made it to a conference finals. Melo did in Denver. Yeah, but like similar players. So in any case, the thing that I focus on is Melo was part of some teams that were not just bad, were atrocities. And there are other quote unquote great players that have been part of some pretty bad teams, but like, I don't know, there's no knock on him being part of a 17-win team. There's no knock. I mean, he played with Derrick Rose.
He barely played that. He barely played that year. I thought he got hurt early in the season, and then after the All-Star break, barely played. I thought.
I looked about this. I know.
I looked it up the other day.
Okay,
sir. He played in 31. It's the first 35 games, I think, or 30 of like the first 34, and they were 5-29, and they were 0-4 in the games he missed, so they were 5-24 in the games he played. Now, look, is that all on him? No, that roster was utterly dog shit in so many ways. Like, and they used like 40 different starting lineups that season. It's absurd. Terrible, terrible team. You know, but he was like, I guess, I don't know. I don't know what I fault him more for. Maybe
go ahead, us.
No, please.
Let me, and this pains me. I've said many nasty things about him on this podcast before, but let me mount a half-hearted defense of Carmelo Anthony's legacy, which is this. He was fantastic. Top of the charts at a skill that we don't value anymore, which is volume scoring inside the 3-point arc. He's great at it. And we don't care about ISO scorers as we look at the game in 2021. And it's a little bit unfair because he was evaluated in real time based on the skill that he was very good at. I think it's almost unfair to him that his legacy is colored by the fact that 90s style analysis looked at Carmelo Anthony as a top 5 player. We were sold a bill of goods that we were getting a top 5 player. And then we got a guy who in reality was like a top 25-ish player because his skill set was in the process of being left behind.
That's the key.
The entire time.
The league was changing as his career was unfolding.
Correct. And he, for whatever reason, didn't have the capability to shift gears and become a different sort of player that would work in the new normal.
And that's what I hold against him a little bit.
Agreed. We saw the teases. We saw the Dad Melo tease. There were moments where we thought to ourselves, wow, he could take the next step. He could be a modern 4 and this could really be something. And it never happened. It never materialized. Yeah. And it makes him fucking frustrating. And the other thing is that from a sabermetric perspective, he's a dude who shows up on every one of the most overrated players of his era list, in part because he was a somewhat dinosaur player in an era of great transition. It's hard to be the 300 hitter when everyone starts hitting 50 home runs or something like that. It's just it's a tough place for his legacy because those Knicks teams, as John said, aside from really like one good year, those Knicks 1.5 were fucking brutal. Yeah. And it's hard to erase the sort of gut feel of the pre-Melo with Amari, but pre-Melo Knicks, which were just so goddamn fun. Probably the most fun team in recent Knicks memory until this past year.
Talking about specifically the first 50 games of that.
Yeah, exactly. The pre-trade deadline season. That team was fun. It had a good feel.
That 10 games of Stoudemire where he was like, oh my God, is he going to win the MVP?
Yes, it was amazing. It was so fun.
It was
and I mean, that was that was a season full of such hope. And he was supposed to be the next step there. And it just never had the right feel. I was on the first date with my now wife, the first playoff game that season. We had to like cut our dinner short because I was like, we have to go to a bar. We should have another drink, but let's go to a bar now.
Should have been a clue to her to run for the hills.
I know, very dumb.
Clue that I think she's wished she's taken many times over the years. But continue.
Dude, someday I'm going to come home and my key is not going to work in the lock, but whatever. She saw a preview day one and put up with this shit. But it's just that was a special team, and it felt like a promise unfulfilled to me. And I think a lot of fans have that sort of mouthfeel for a Melo.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans, and I this is going to sound wrong, but I don't mean it this way. I think a lot of fans like you two feel that way because they don't look at the 2010 season as that special. They were 20-18 when they made the Melo trade. That stretch with Amari going off, yeah, it was great, which is why you thought pairing him with a Carmelo Anthony would be great. And it is almost as if his health went off a cliff, and now Melo was looking for a new sidekick. So that's at least my response. I think people more look at the 2013 season as special. That's where you designate that season. That was a special season, and the Knicks didn't know how to recreate it the following season, which I don't put the blame on Carmelo Anthony for that. I put them on the guys that were in charge of putting a team together.
It's such a veteran mercenary squad. It's going out and getting all these aged folks in and tossing them together. Sometimes that shit works. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not as though that team was a sustainable thing that's going to go on a 5-year run when Jason Kidd is your point guard. What is he, 40 at that point? It's just not what you can feasibly build around.
I mean, look, we can pick apart the Carmelo Anthony era, and I think to your point, Andrew, the lion's share of the blame lies on the decision-making processes of those who were running the team at that time. I'm not disputing that. Could different superstar players in that role have done more or differently to, it's like 2013-14. Yes, some of the vets left the squad, but they still had the bones of it. And they started off, what were they, 2-9 to start off that year? Something, it cratered it, from like, where does the blame lie there? Like, are we going back and like analyzing game by, we're not going to do that.
But if you want me to, I can say J.R. Smith wasn't even close to what he was the year before. Steve Novak was off the team at that point. He didn't come back.
No, I think Novak
was he there.
He was there.
I'll look it up.
I'm trying to remember when it was that I was upset that Steve Novak was gone, but it might have been 2015. Regardless, like the key thing is that the Knicks looked at what they lost at the end of 2013 and then went into 2014 and said, you know what, we'll fix everything. Andrea Bargnani. And that is why I can't blame Carmelo for not being able to win with Andrea Bargnani.
You might win the argument with that, which is
the thing is, I don't even think it's that complex of an argument. I think largely at its core, the three of us agree about Melo. I think he could have been the best player, the second best player on a team that won the championship in this era, which maybe if he did get Chris Paul, both of their skills match better and Melo can play off ball more because he has shown in his career that if he has a competent point guard, he's willing to share a little more. It's he didn't pass enough to Landry Fields or Iman Shumpert and these guys that weren't great shooters to begin with. Like, how dare you not pass to Jose Calderon? Like the 17-win season, midway through that season, Tyson Chandler was gone. Iman Shumpert was gone. Who went in the J.R. Smith went in that trade?
It was J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert.
Right. So it's like they stripped that team and Melo's like, all right, I'm going to go get surgery. Call me when we have talent back on this team, which I don't necessarily blame him for.
I think the argument, and I'm not saying it's a great argument, but it's the argument is that, like, you look at a guy like Kemba Walker, who for the meat of his career in Charlotte, like, we love Kemba Walker. We love him here as a Knick now. But like, there was the 1 year he had. So like he had his version of the 2012-13 year in 2015-16 when they won 48 games. And the next 3 years after that, 36 wins, 39 wins with some rosters that if you go back and look at, I mean, you want to talk about piddling? Mm-hmm. It's just not what you want. And it's like, things things spiraled out of control here, but that's also because like all the attention was focused on it. And there was, it's the Phil Jackson drama, and like, there's lots of reasons for it. And things really cratered out cratered a few times, I think.
Can I give you a better comp?
Sure.
How did we view Devin Booker before this season?
Oh yeah.
Like, the guy's asked to do one thing on that team is score. And then
he's young though.
But like Melo, through most of his career in the beginning, was a first round exit. Like, he was barely probably had more playoff success than Devin Booker, because he was at least making the playoffs. But Melo was asked to do one thing for those Nuggets teams, and it was score. Then they put him with a point guard. He made the conference finals. Can't fault him for not beating Kobe Bryant in one of the last great years of Kobe Bryant, especially once Kobe, as is most of Kobe's career, got a low post threat that he could play off of. I look at Melo's career more as if he ever got the point guard, and maybe it was Chris Paul, maybe it could have been. We'll never know about the trade. I still think a lot of us are misremembering what that season was like. I remember that was like the first year I started listening to podcasts.
Which season are you talking about when they almost traded for Chris Paul?
Well, no, the season that they traded for Melo. That's like the first year I discovered that people didn't talk on WFAN and had other mediums to talk about sports, right? That was the first year where I was like, I found the BS report. I found, other people that were just talking about sports, and the way they were talking about that offseason and what the CBA was coming, every player from the players union from up top was being told, get your money now. We have no idea if we're playing next year. You might miss an entire year of your prime. Like, get on your next contract before the season ends, which is why Melo forced his hand. Now you can project, because we know what happened. Like, oh, they played on Christmas and now the CBA actually is very player friendly. But I remember being in the moment, like, they kind of have to get Melo now, else he's going to go someplace else to get his money.
I don't. And
then we're still sitting here waiting for Donnie Walsh to do something. So.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think gets us to like the Dame thing. Like, there is a logic where when you could get the guy, you get the guy, and you worry about the rest later.
Can I ask a what if? Since I want to now prove that I do read John's newsletter, even though this week's been really busy and apparently I missed something recently.
It's okay. Sure.
So, speaking of what ifs, if they did do that Kyle Lowry trade that Dolan steps in and you get a mini 3-year run of Melo and Lowry, what's the peak of that team? Is it the Lowry DeRozan teams? So potentially a couple of conference finals?
So I have to go back and recall for myself the Kyle Lowry trade, I believe, was almost made not during the Bargs, the 2013-14
2 years later. Yeah, it was 2 years later.
But yeah, but no, I don't know if that's right, because Kyle Lowry made the All-Star team in 2014-15. So, and 2014-15 was the year that the Knicks won 17 games. So I think the almost Lowry trade was in 2013-14. Andrew, if you want to,
I'll look it up. Yeah,
I'll confirm that. Because that only makes sense, because they would have it has to, because you know what, they would have the whole thing was Dolan didn't want to give up Shumpert, right, for Lowry, and in 2014-15 they ended up trading Amon Shumpert just to get rid of J.R. Smith So I'm going to assume it was in the 13-14 season, which is when they had just traded for Bargs. And am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
Your rumored trade was Meta World Peace, Amon Shumpert, and a 2018 first round pick.
Okay. Yes. I think it's fascinating because Felton was still the point guard for the rest of that year. His last year in New York, he was not as good because he really wasn't being like Jason Kidd was kind of the nominal shooting guard on the 12-13 team, even though like Felton was listed as the point guard, but like they shared duties. It worked.
He was the Lonzo. He was a connector.
Yeah, it was a weird brew, and it worked. You put Lowry on the 13-14 Knicks. They fell a game short of the playoffs. I say Lowry gets them to the playoffs. And if they get to the playoffs, because don't forget, they finished that season 16-5 in the last 21 games. for Mike Woodson. They were rampaging. If they get in the playoffs, can Phil Jackson fire Mike Woodson?
Ooh.
Or can he replace, but can he, I don't know if he fired him, but like not renew him, whatever, I forget the contract situation, but basically replace him with Derek Fisher. I'm not sure that he can.
Oz?
If he makes it in, you have to think he stays, especially with the way they wrapped up the season. I mean, look,
which is a stupid reason.
It's all counterfactual bullshit at this point, but that is sort of fascinating. I think he has to stay, and it's hard not to think about how the Lowry Baby Hardaway at that point fit might have actually worked out. I think the steps that we've seen Hardaway take at the end of his Knicks time, but also in Dallas, might actually have happened in faster progress with someone like Lowry around him. It's sort of an interesting scenario. And I kind of think it does save Woodson and delay a lot of the hellscape that we came to watch afterwards.
It's funny because I constantly have this idea we always get back to RJ Barrett, where maybe if RJ Barrett isn't the most talented player on the team that he's on, he like eventually becomes like the leader of the team that he's on, and like maybe the most important guy in the locker room or something like that. So to me, this would have been perfect because I think everything that I was saying before, the better way to like, condense that into one sentence is that Carmelo Anthony was probably not meant to be the galvanizing force that will be like, okay, guys, we know the chips are down, but we're not going to let go of the rope. We're going to stick this thing out like that, because guess what? Several teams let go of the rope. Lowry, no, I mean, listen, can we at least agree on that?
No, I agree completely.
Okay, Andrew, can we like
what
that several Knicks teams that he was on did let go of the rope?
Define let go of the rope. We're bad. Like we're
ended
bad.
Up sucking ass and not caring about the fact that they suck ass.
That is correct. Okay. Because there's a difference between like the team wasn't good enough to be better, and there's like they
unwatchable
quit.
Shit.
Like they quit, which the back half of the 2 50-loss seasons under Hornacek, where I guess the Hornacek and the second Fisher season were very frustrating because it's like, oh, they could be better, but there's clearly nothing making them better.
So this is a really tough conversation to have because that following offseason, so the 2013-14, let's say they get into the playoffs and they lose in the first round. Mm-hmm. Phil Jackson's first major move as GM was trading Tyson Chandler and Felton to the Mavs for Jose Calderon, the immortal Sam Dallenberg, Wayne Ellington, by the way, still relatively young Wayne Ellington, Shane Larkin, we all love Shane Larkin, and then the picks that would become Thanasis and Antetokounmpo and Clay Anthony Early selected over Nikola Jokic, by the way.
You want to talk about somebody that Knicks fans were excited about that didn't matter? Clay Anthony Early
drank all the Kool-Aid, any and all Kool-Aid that was available for me to drink. I consumed it. So presumably they do not draft or they do not make that specific trade because they'd have Kyle Lowry and there would be no need to upgrade, big air quote energy here, upgrade at point guard to Jose Calderon. But there was also the thing about Chandler and Melo in the locker room. Again, it all comes back to Melo, that like Melo wouldn't resign if Chandler was still here. Don't tell me I'm the only one who remembers this.
I thought they were tight. I didn't realize that there was a rift there.
Okay. I vaguely recall that there was a falling out of sorts.
Falling out, yeah.
Yeah. And that
what did Tyson Chandler do after he left? So if anything, good on Melo.
It was probably right to trade him, but maybe so let's just say this. Maybe there's a different trade that gets made. Or there's a different return or something, and like it's not Calderon, and it's just and then how do they fill out the rest of the roster? Tyson Chandler was making a good deal of money at that time. I don't know who else they could have traded him for, who else may have wanted him. That's the tough part for me. I just don't, because that roster, to really, this is the answer to the question, is like that roster in 14-15, and this really is the best defensive Melo. That roster was atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were really bad. Like they had Langston Galloway, rookie year Langston Galloway. But it's not what you want. So.
And then we can wrap up Melo talk after this. The only other thing I'll say is what followed that 14-15 season was then 2 straight seasons of Phil Jackson trying to play like division by, not even division by subtraction, but like divide and advance, like he used to do in the 90s, where it's like, I'll turn Scotty against Michael, and then I'll turn the media against them. And then
he had KP and he wanted to build around KP.
I actually don't know if it was that simple. But he was doing it from up top and not in the locker room is my point. He was like, you need to run the triangle, but I'm going to go live in California and you need to do this. And Charlie Rosen, write an article for a website that doesn't exist anymore.
It was all nonsense.
So like the dysfunction that then like gave him a no trade clause. And then everybody's asking him, why does Melo not want to waive his no trade clause? Like, because you gave it to me. I'd want to win here. You know, we want to rebuild around KP, but we're going to sign Joakim Noah to $72 million and Courtney Lee to $50-something million and trade for Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
You know, I once saw Phil Jackson at a bar during a Knicks game across the street from a Broadway theater in January of 2015. Very tall, actually kind of a handsome fellow up close, but yeah, he was there with Jeannie and 2 other folks. They were just sitting at a table at the bar.
Can I ask
I went to see Once the Musical right after. Yes.
Was he watching the game at least?
No, there was no TV in the bar.
Watching
there was no TV.
It was
in
a
the
theater bar. It was a theater bar. I think he went to the same showing of Once on Broadway after. It was like the last week Once was playing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was my close encounter with Phil Jackson, who was very, very committed to the New York Knickerbockers.
I thought you were about to say very, very committed to the cocktail in front of him.
2 things. One,
I think he was going through them very quickly. It was just a real
2 things.
Spring break vibe.
Once is as good as you said, by the way. I finally watched it. It's very good. There's a movie Once that Oz recommended, which is a theme of Final Review. Oz recommends a movie I've never seen. Hey, it's actually pretty good. And the revisionist history, some have tried with Phil Jackson and his tenure here. My trump card, my final word, I feel like the argument against anyone that wants to say the Phil Jackson era wasn't that bad. Because like they've said, like, oh, he wanted to trade Porzingis for Devin Booker. And then where would we be?
Hi, Yash.
Fell asleep in the Donovan Mitchell workout. That's all I have to say. Donovan Mitchell's in front of him.
Was it confirmed that was the workout he fell asleep in front of?
Donovan Mitchell said he fell asleep in my workout.
Yeah, I've never seen that. That's news to me. Okay. That's
like anyone that's like, oh, we took Frank over Donovan Mitchell. Well, we can blame Phil Jackson for that. So.
I like Donovan Mitchell. Listen, I don't
tend to like Donovan Mitchell too.
I don't go around defending Phil Jackson, nor will I. That was not the job he was suited for. He might not have been suited for that job when he was 35, let alone when he was 90, whenever it was when he took the job.
I think he has a lot more in common basketball wise with Isaiah's tenure than people want to admit is what I'll say.
Different.
The man was very happy the checks cleared.
Yes,
pretty much.
I think Leon Rose is getting paid more than him, by the way, but possibly a lot more, and he has earned as much. Wow, I did not expect to have a whole Melo conversation on this episode, but it's a good transition because so Oz, before you were mentioning some savory ways to look at Carmelo Anthony and his playing tenure and why certain people don't necessarily hold him in the highest regard. Andrew, you mentioned another player, Allen Iverson, who I think is probably not terribly Saber friendly, if I had to guess.
That's true.
The tricky one, I think, is Kobe, because every NBA player swears by Kobe, and anybody that like us that like we never played, obviously. So we're looking at it from a certain perspective, and Kobe has a lot of those long twos that a lot of us with basketball reference hate.
Maybe
speak for yourself. I was the starting center on my 8th grade team, despite being the the smallest kid on the team. So fuck you.
I don't look it. I played 4 years varsity. I won a couple intramural games in college.
I unfortunately wrestled in high school, so that didn't help. But yeah.
I played on my 8th grade team, allegedly. Yeah, I've never reported to be an athlete. So maybe Kobe is the proper analog for The Dark Knight, because there are people, I am sure, who listen to your guys' podcast today and wanted to throw things and commit violent acts against small animals at the just utterly preposterous things that were coming out of Bernard Ozarowski's mouth about this movie, which redefined cinema and which they should build another Los Angeles just so they could put a Hall of Fame to this movie in it, because it is the greatest. It's obviously better than Goodfellas, right? Because it's higher on the IMDb 250 list. If you say a bad thing about, and look, Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace. We all love Kobe Bryant here, but I'm just using him as like, there are things when if you say a bad basketball word about Kobe Bryant, people just lose their shit. Whereas, I think there are very sound arguments, again, to Bernard's many points that he made on your guys' podcast today about The Dark Knight, that like, look, as you said, you have it as an 8 out of 10. It's a 4-star movie. Very good movie. Is Kobe in the same breath as LeBron and Michael Jordan? I would argue not. And I would argue that there is data that supports that argument. So I think it's interesting how, like, where content is right now, the two things that the most, like, content that drives content the most are sports and movies. Is that fair to say? By far? Yeah, definitely. And both conversations about both of those things. And I'm going to say actually particularly basketball, because I feel like the dichotomy of like the analytics community in basketball versus the like, oh, this guy's not a real hooper community in basketball is very unique to that sport. And there's also the similar dichotomy in movies. And I don't know. I just find that interesting. I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts about it.
I think you're tapping into something really smart there, because I think fan culture might be the right word, both in basketball and in movies, where there's a sort of sanctification of certain players and or films where any questioning or quibbling of said player is taken as a personal insult. And in effect, if you dare to say that, I don't know, Kobe's the 15th best player to ever walk the earth, it's roughly the equivalent of saying, I don't know, Zack Snyder has some flaws in his filmmaking to certain elements.
I was wondering where you were going to go.
I mean, I got to go with the favorite target here. Look, I don't want to get into a giant Dark Knight thing, but I think that's exactly right. There are easy ways to look at things. Kobe is an aesthetically pleasing player. He's exciting. He personally is an interesting, fascinating character to follow throughout his career. And there's an element to all sports fandom where you embrace these people. We all want to see the best in Frank and RJ because they seem like good guys. They seem like people that we want to spend our time rooting for. Like, look, J.R. Smith is fun and all that, but like, nobody is living and dying by the arc of J.R. Smith's career. It's someone like RJ that you want to invest in. And
Speak for yourself.
I know. Macri has so many pipe shirts, but look, I it's only one. I'm surprised.
I only have one pipe.
But look, I think you've really hit on something here, which is that there are deeper ways to look at things and there are more diverse ways to look at things. I mean, you could look at a player based on the sort of gut feel of Kobe fucking rocks, or you can look at the metrics, read up on scouting, read what his peers think, and kind of take a more holistic view of things. And I think filmmaking is much the same way. There's sort of, I look at it as, almost like 3 or 4 things that you can look at. There's the craft of filmmaking, like how well made something is. There's the skill of the actors and what they do as storytellers. There's the writing and the plotting. And then there's also the sort of fun feel factor. The MCU movies get shit on as not cinema because they're really good at the fun factor and don't necessarily give a shit about some of the other things. And I think it's got to be a balance of all of those component elements. And really, it's got to be the same thing when you're analyzing any player in any sport. There's got to be a balance of sort of the gut feel. We saw it on baseball with Jeter Hall of Fame this week. Yeah. It's been yet another relitigation of that because he's the ultimate gut feel player with quibbles on the Sabre side. I think you've really you've hit right on to something about the intersection of sports and film fandom.
Before I get to Andrew, I was thinking about this when I was listening to your pod today, because Bernard, look, I don't, you could think Dark Knight's the greatest movie ever. I don't know how you defend the last, what is it, half hour of the movie, 35 minutes of the movie. I mean, Andrew, you even said as much.
I'll let you finish. And then
but my point is that, like, for Bernard, that holds him back in putting the movie where others do. For you, the Heath Ledger of it all is like, you're like, I don't really give a shit. Like, I understand, but by that point, the movie had transported me to a certain place because of this otherworldly thing that I'm watching. That you could watch movies for a decade and not see something like this. Like, that was enough for you, and I think it made it a great discussion, because I don't think either of you are wrong. I think you both are justified. Whereas with sports, I wonder if it feels like there should be a right and a wrong, but maybe that's just the way my brain works, because it's different. It's like one thing is art and the other thing is, I don't know what sports are, but it's not art, is it? Or maybe it is art. I don't know.
I think you're getting to peak versus longevity again, which fits every sports arc of how you look at things. And I think maybe I am weighting longevity here a little bit. And I think I said on the podcast, and if I didn't, I'll say it now. The first hour and a half of that movie is like a 10 out of 10 for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fucking good. And then the plot of that movie shifts. I assume that everyone has seen The Dark Knight, so I don't think we need to play games here.
Spoiler alert, I guess.
Spoiler alert for the
made
13-year-old movie.
Yeah.
But when Maggie Gyllenhaal dies, the movie shifts in a really significant way. And for me, it's just not a very good movie in the last 45 minutes. It's like a Saw movie with the stupid bombs on the boats. It's very dumb.
That was a good call.
And I just, for me, it really hurts my overall appreciation of it. And I can't go nuts over someone who says, you know what, it gave you an hour and a half of joy. Shut the fuck up and be happy with that. I can't go nuts over that.
Andrew, you should have actually said that.
That was Andrew's point. But look, the gimmick of the pod is that we're ranking greatness. We're not comparing The Dark Knight to Jonah Hex. We're comparing The Dark Knight to Goodfellas. Like, we're talking about the greatest movies ever made here. So the quibbles matter, because I don't think the last 45 minutes of Goodfellas is dog shit. I don't think the last 45 minutes of The Godfather Part 2 blows. So when we're going to compare those sorts of things, it really fucking matters.
You hit on something though there, because with the ranking greatness thing, like, I could sit here and make an argument that, goodness, Moses Malone is a better basketball player than Kobe Bryant, right? I could finagle that. I mean, I'm not going to, because I don't even know that I believe that. But, like, I'm sure there's an argument that can be made based on, like, analytics and whatnot, or even like Hakeem Olajuwon or something. But when you're ranking greatness, I do think you actually need to take into account the stuff that can't be quantified, which, Andrew, I think is what you were getting at on the pod, right?
A little bit. And this goes to back remember when The Last Dance came out and that's all we had to watch? Yeah. This goes back to
I did 5 podcasts with John.
I know. We didn't even know each other at that point. I just knew.
You heard me say crazy drunken shit.
What I was listening to is like, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with this person. Anyway, the whole idea of GOAT versus BOAT, that the GOAT conversation's over. Michael Jordan will always have that, because greatness isn't just like ability to play basketball. Greatness implies accomplishment. Greatness implies, like, did you matter to your era? And nobody will ever reach the highest height like Michael Jordan did. I don't think ever. Like, basketball mattered in a different way in the 90s than anybody else did. It's why that's the case for Kobe. Kobe's legacy, I'm sorry if you're a Kobe stan and you're hearing this and you're offended, but, like, there's no basketball argument for him to be the greatest of all time. There's no basketball argument that he's ahead of LeBron James. And if you bring up the championships, Shaquille O'Neal is my counterpoint. Kobe's legacy, it transcends basketball. He taught a generation of people to work hard. The reason we see all of these gym rats, these guys that spend their entire off season working on their game, is because the moment Kobe won a championship, the next day he was having an 8-hour practice.
How about the pictures we're seeing on
Julius Randle? That's Kobe. That's Mamba mentality. Exactly.
Just one thing, Academy Award winner, Kobe Bryant. We should keep that accurate here.
There, we related to movies. There you go. Although we'll never get to see those awards presented on screen anymore, but that's a whole different conversation.
We're getting deep cuts. Oscars. There we go.
Wait, hold on. What?
So the Oscar. Remember when I told you what the ratings of the Oscars were and how low they were?
I think I saw a news story in this and I didn't read it. So I'm going to be learning something in real time.
The worst. You knew this.
Yeah, it's very bad. It's like 40% of the next highest show was their viewership this year. They did like 10 million viewers.
Oh, wait, I knew that. But you're saying they're making some kind of changes? Or
yes.
Big ones.
The big ones the big ones, I think, is just that all the shorts and some of the smaller awards are now going to be presented off screen. They're going to try and make it more television pleasing.
Okay.
Anyway,
that's what you're saying.
The point being, to avoid an even bigger rabbit trail of the industry and why we didn't do a movie podcast, you did a niche movie podcast. The bigger point is, like, for The Dark Knight, what I enjoy about it, what I enjoy about The Dark Knight, I'm able to then ignore some of the things I agree with Oz on, because that's, I think, at the end of the day, what the conclusion we came up to is that, like, yeah, there's some superhero bullshit in that movie. There is some stuff that you're supposed to, if you're watching a movie that is clearly make-believe, you're supposed to turn your brain off and be like, all right, superhero bullshit, whatever, this is fun. And then the Heath Ledger character actually transcends the superhero bullshit and is like, oh no, this is something I've never seen before, and changes every bad guy in every movie going forward. Yeah. Which is the conversation of best versus greatest. Like, if we're supposed to take The Dark Knight and not compare it to the entire MCU and Spider-Man 2, but we're comparing it to the greatest movies of all time, then this is what we have to compare it to. And if we're comparing Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan and LeBron James and people who have resumes that are better, then we have to nitpick. But if you're just able to ignore that and say, like, his impact on a generation of basketball players matters more, then that's your prerogative. And it's why Oz and I being able to agree to disagree, because Oz, I haven't even talked to you about this yet, but the feedback I've gotten of today's episode is,
I can't wait to hear this.
Well, there are some people who were not offended by Oz's stance on The Dark Knight, specifically on Christian Bale.
Shout out to the guy who said I should be final reviewed for making him throw up or something.
But like the one piece of feedback I got that I was like, you know what, damn it, that's our show. Like, that's exactly the point, is I see where he's coming from, but I completely disagree, which that's the point. Oz is never going to come with me with an uninformed take. It's always going to be like your take on Christian Bale. I disagree with it, but like, I get it. It doesn't work for you how method he gets into, the weight he loses. He disappears, but you don't like some of the things he disappears into. It works for me though. And that is where art being subjective matters.
So the thing you just said, it works for you. I mean, we're not going to get into the ways to quantify the success of a movie, fucking Rotten Tomatoes or like box office or whatever. At the end of the day, the movie works if you go into the movie and you leave with a smile, that's even an over. Like, it did the thing that it was supposed to do, make you excited.
That was time well spent.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it did something for you, as opposed to you sat there and felt nothing or whatever. That's different than sports, because in sports, the goal is to beat the team that you're playing. And for all due respect to the conversation we just had about, like, yes, when you rank basketball players or players in any sports, like there is a larger than life element that you need to consider. Like where I think the conversation where I have the most difficulty, and this to me is like trying to talk about a Zack Snyder movie with people who adore Zack Snyder movies, is when you get people on, like, when you get into conversations not about Kobe or Melo, but about like lesser players who are not that high profile, and you get you get the Frank conversations, right? Or you get the flip side of that, and you get conversations about, I'm trying to think of like, who's a showboaty player that just like the analytics community thinks, oh, hey, Russell Westbrook. right?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
There you go.
Like there are people out there, maybe some people on this podcast, who think that Russell Westbrook is like actively detrimental to a team's effort to win basketball games and would not want anything to do with him, when there are other people who are like, you don't respect with this person. Like, this person is one of the greatest players of all time and it's still great today. Do you not see points and rebounds and assists and the snarl? Do you not see the snarl? Like, to me, Russell Westbrook's snarl is Zach. That's Zach. I think Zach Snyder is actually directing Russell Westbrook when he makes his, like, you know, histrionic faces or whatever bullshit that he does. That's to me where it gets into places where, like, I don't want to have those conversations because it doesn't lead to productive places, for me at least.
And it's where it's hilarious when people bring up Russ around, like the Patreon pod we just did. I knew you weren't going to take Russ when we were doing an all decades draft.
I thought about it because he wasn't always this. He was more productive.
He's never been a winning player.
He made it to the conference finals, or actually
with Kevin Durant,
the finals.
With Kevin Durant and James Harden. He was never the best player on the team. He was the second best player on the team that went and lost to the Heat. Yes, but
yeah. That's an accomplishment. There haven't been that many guys in NBA history who could say they were the second best player on a finals team. That's fine. A significant accomplishment.
I think the evidence is in what's happened to players when they leave Russell Westbrook and how much better they do than because, like, again, I hate sometimes when, like, I'm just a dude on a podcast saying Russell Westbrook's not good, but like, it's documented literally on precedent of everybody that leaves Russell Westbrook goes someplace else and achieves individual success and team success. It is just hilarious how, like, this year it's to the point where you won't even call the Lakers a super team.
They're not.
Are they going to be the best record in the West?
No, actually, no. They're a playoff terror, but they're not going to be the best record in the West. They're going to load manage the hell out of that thing.
I'm vice versa on this. I think the fact that they got Russ means that, like what's happened in Brooklyn, and that those guys can maybe, honestly, now you got me thinking that maybe because they'll load manage, like, my concerns about the Lakers are way more in the playoffs.
12 games off with a hamstring or something like that around the
you might be able
break.
to survive that if you have two of them on the court at all times, though. During the regular season, you might still get 60 wins out of it. My concern is in the playoffs when a team says, all right, Russ has to shoot. We're making him do that. Can the Lakers adjust like the Rockets weren't able to, like the Thunder weren't able to? And obviously, I don't even know what to quantify about the Wizard series, but, like, I think in the playoffs, I'm concerned about, like, I think if there's a world where Kawhi comes back healthy, they can scheme a way to beat the Lakers next year. If Jamal Murray comes back healthy, maybe there's a way they can scheme to make Russ shoot. Like, the playoffs, the short sample size is where it matters. During the regular season, I think they're actually built to win 60 games accidentally.
That's how they want to go about the regular season is their choice.
Right.
But, like, they're not a super team because, like, Russ, he's not that level of player. Like, what? That's not a hot take. I mean,
you would take Chris Bosh over Russell Westbrook. I know I would. Is there any real?
Oh my God! Over the 4 years that Chris Bosh was on Miami,
over the Miami era, late Toronto Miami era Bosh.
That's not even a conversation. That's all. He was still playing like a Hall of Famer. He was in his prime.
That seems to me a good case. They're not a super team if they don't have the third piece.
Are the Bucks a super team?
No.
Then you're consistent. Never mind. Then you're consistent.
Yeah. No, There's one super team in the league right now, and sadly, plays
you're consistent
about
on
a mile away from where I live now.
Literally, I walked it the other day.
It was great.
Yeah.
That's a super team. But that's, I don't know how many.
You're consistent. Now I see what you mean. Okay. I have them as a super team, but I guess my standards for super team are a little lower. That's all.
I don't even know that the Celtics of, like, 2008 through 2010 would I define as a super team.
Okay.
To me, a super team is where you
shade.
Ray Allen,
or just all Rajon Rondo shade.
When the Celtics got Ray Allen, he was he was on the older side. He was a top 25-ish player in the league, top 20, top 25. But like the days of him being, if he was ever an elite shot creator, like that's the thing. I don't look at Ray Allen as ever having, I know he averaged like 25 points a game for, I don't know, a handful of years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, something like that. But like, he was never looked at as like, he was never on Iverson's level or even like, quite frankly, Marbury's level in terms of like what he was able to do with the ball. He was a different kind of animal. Like super teams to me are teams where you combine 3 players who are at that point in their career able to carry an offense and do so like respectably. So like, I don't know. I feel like I can count the amount of super teams I've watched in my life on one hand. Like Brooklyn is one. I do think the Heat qualify.
Yeah, definitely.
Easily.
The Warriors, but they were different because they had Durant and Curry, and then like the rest of it made it like Curry and Durant were enough. Like two of them, but they were a super team.
The Warriors, and people hate when we use this word around the Warriors, but they were a super system. They figured something out that like changed the league forever, which then people think, oh, so you think Steph is a system player? No, but
they had 2 of the 3 best offensive players in the sport at one time.
The system was you were not mathematically going to be able to beat us unless you take 100 threes a game. And lo and behold, nobody did until Durant and Clay both got hurt in a 7-game series.
Boy, that sounds a lot like someone taking Belichick over Brady in 2021, doesn't it?
I mean, I have not conceded the Belichick mattered than Brady argument while seeing that Brady went to a team that was loaded and everybody wanted to go there, and if Matt LaFleur just goes for it on 4th down, who knows what happens?
Wow.
That Bucks team.
Wow.
Anyway,
we are now officially off the rails. Yeah, I think I'm going to just go with 3. And that's going to be my final answer. I don't think there was any. Yeah. All right. Let's finish up with Producer's Corner. Andrew, you have anything?
So this is a bit of a somber note, but it doesn't make sense not to at least mention that when you're hearing this, it's 9/10. It's September 10th, 2021. And tomorrow is the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And we are 3 gentlemen in our 30s. Some of our lower 30s, some of them almost pushing 40, but who's counting? I figure we should reflect a little bit on that day in 2001. Where were you? And what 20 years later, it's weird to say legacy because it's obvious what that legacy, it is the moment in history books that we were all now there for. It's weird to hear people like Chris's age or even my brother's age talk about like learning about 9/11 in their history books. Like, yeah, I missed school for like 2 days. It was terrifying. So John, I guess we'll start with you. Your recollection of September 11, 2001.
Yeah, I mean, I was asleep because I didn't have class that morning, and I was in my dorm. My buddy
You're in
Aaron,
college.
Yes, I was in college, freshman in college. My buddy Aaron, who I think you both know, burst into the dorm room, and he was like, "Turn on the TV." Turn it on. I think the second tower had been hit by that point. I'm just like, what the fuck's going on? I was dating a girl whose dad worked at, he was a commodities broker, something, but he worked in World Trade. So like many people that morning, I spent my morning just trying to get through on the phone to see where he was. He ended up being stuck in traffic, so he was fine. But yeah, I mean, I was in a dorm with like a bunch of 18, 19-year-old guys who were talking about, I'm going to join the Marines and the Army and go off to war and all of that kind of talk. That was, I remember that distinctly. There were people going up on a roof to watch the smoke.
And you were in the Bronx because you were in Fordham, right?
I was in Bronx and Fordham. And it was, you realize in the moment you're experiencing a defining event, the defining event. I don't know if I realized if I was, I realized I was experiencing something that was like, it was surreal. I'm sure there's an argument for some other event in my lifetime that is on par with that. I don't think it's probably a good one. I mean, that is the defining event of our generation. And it just, it hovered over everything for years. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that like I remember the patriotism that was in the immediate aftermath, and how that slowly. We're not getting into a political discussion on this podcast, but like that slowly dissipated over the years. And I remember like always thinking about like, man, remember how much everybody loved this country after 9/11? We're willing to do anything for this guy. And then that kind of just changed, and life goes on and things happen. And again, we don't have to talk about them on the show, but yeah, that's my memory. That's what I think of when I think of 9/11. And of course, all the people who lost their lives.
Yeah. Oz.
So I was a junior in high school when it happened, and I went to boarding school. So I was actually in school just outside of DC when it happened. And that morning I was a student prefect. So I had a TV in my room, which most people didn't. And I for whatever reason, I don't think I had a first period class that day. And I remember I was sitting in my room watching the news, sort of flabbergasted. And I went to my chemistry class that I was supposed to at whatever time, and told some people who had not heard yet or had only heard like the faintest rumblings, because these are pre cell phones for everyone and smartphones and everything like that. And I remember about 10 minutes into the class, we were all called. So school, Georgetown Prep, it was a school of 440 guys. We were all called to the auditorium for, an announcement thing. And they told us that, what had happened at the World Trade Center. They told us all this other crazy stuff that ended up not being true, but it was a day of misinformation, the likes of which I don't think we've ever seen. I think they told us a car bomb went off in front of the Capitol, that a plane was shot down on the way to the White House. Just all sorts of crazy stuff came through, and, they canceled school. Folks went home, and I was stuck in my dorm room. And a bunch of us were. And I remember me and a couple of other guys hatched this scheme to try to sneak out and go to NIH to try to give blood, because we thought that would be a good idea. And that was eventually quashed by some of the adults who were in charge. But, I think, John, you really tapped into something, that there was a real sort of, one for all mentality that took hold for a little while. And that was in a lot of ways, obviously some bad came of it too, but in a lot of ways there was a good moment of coming together that I will miss. And I can remember specifically going to sporting events after, and, the new metal detectors and pat downs, but there was a sense of, we're going to put up with this, and then we're going to go chant USA and go watch our baseball game.
Were you at game 3?
No, I was
George Bush pitch game.
Nope. I watched it on TV. I was at Cal Ripken's last game because of it, which was a similar thing. I remember seeing snipers on the roof at Camden Yards and thinking it was just the most surreal thing you could imagine. But that really, for me, it's almost, you think of for me at least, one of the things that flashes to my mind is the Springsteen album, that The Rising, that came out later that year, which it's this sort of moment that for me captures a lot of the positive, I don't want to say positive, but that's really the only word that comes to mind, the positive feelings and sensations that come out of such an otherwise horrible occurrence.
Yeah. So I was in 8th grade, just to make you feel really young, really old, excuse me. I was in my private school, and I had excused myself, as I tended to do, you know how you like ask for a hall pass to go to the bathroom, and then you just like go to the go to the bathroom on the other side of the school. So that way, like, where were you? Kid. I was in the bathroom. Yes, I was very much that kid. It's why I was C's get degrees, John. Anyway, I went to like the bathroom on the other side of the school, which was near the chapel. And I heard a news telecast being played in the auditorium. Like, okay, what's going on in there? And I walked in just to like peek to see what was going on. And all of the teachers were in the back, kind of white-faced and just in shock of what they were watching. Yeah. And I saw the first tower collapse on screen. Oh, wow. And I was like, what movie are they watching? What in the world is on my screen right now? The screen goes blank, and I hear an announcement that all secondary students are to report to the auditorium for an emergency assembly, where they then told us what happened. And I knew my dad. So I knew my dad worked in the city. I it's one of those things where you just, oh yeah, dad works there. And I just had never put two and two together where he could be in the city. Is he uptown, downtown? Ironically, he had been out of work and had been going on interviews, and a month earlier interviewed for an IT job in the South Tower.
Oh, wow.
So in August. And so like immediately, and this is again, everybody, pre-cell phones, there's a line for the payphone in my school, and 3 girls ahead of me, she had a father that was a firefighter, and they hadn't been able to get in contact with him for like hours. So she like collapsed at the payphone and left. And then I didn't want to make a phone call. I was very much 13 and wanted to be like, I'm not ready to even call home to find out. My cousin, who was a senior, picked me up and my cousin and took me home to be like, we're leaving school now. And when I got home, my dad was sitting on my front porch. And that was like the first time I knew he was okay. And then the day started to like hit me like, holy cow. Like apparently it's ironic. He was actually on like right off the Cross Island when he got the call from my mom to turn around and come home. Okay. Which is now I live off the Cross Island, which is, little weird sequitur there. But the all for one and one for all that you guys are talking about, it is mind blowing to tell people in 2021 that all of Congress, as divided as we are now, all of Congress on 9/11 stood on the front steps of the Capitol building and sang God Bless America together. Now, it's also weird when you look at the actions of the administration then, that George Bush then went out in his first presidential address after 9/11 and condemned the treatment of Islam and people people of color that are Muslims, and that Islam is peace. And the radical terrorists that did this are not our Muslim brothers and sisters. They are not to be mistreated. They are Americans, and we should deserve to be united in this front. And that is the immediate way that I thought. Everybody had a USA hat. We were Americans in that time. We were united in that time. And it quickly faded. But the fear of, can this ever happen again? That
I remember. I remember
like the sense of security that you got, because like all that stuff happens over there, well, just disappeared. Like it was gone, And I can only imagine being closer to the city, or even Oz in DC, how much worse it was for you guys.
Well, there was now you're bringing me back. There was an unknown. We don't have to spend a lot more time on this, but very briefly, there was an unknown of like, any day you left your house, if you were going to a place where there's going to be a lot of people, it's like, is this like the next target? Which reminds me of the other event of our lifetime, which is going to be the defining event, which is the one we're in fucking right now. And the similar feeling of like, what's the next variant? And like, when's the next shutdown going to be? Which again, we don't have to get into that. The only other thing I will say is I have a feeling you may share this feeling. I don't know about you, Andrew. It blows my mind. It blew my mind when I started to interact with people. This was a feeling I got my first year teaching, actually, when I taught a lesson on 9/11, and kids didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're kidding, right? Like, this is the defining event of our lifetime. I'm like, oh wait, no. They were born like that year or the year after or whatever. And like, they don't fucking care about this. Like, why would, that's an overgeneralization. I'm sure some people cared about it, but like, it was so overarching in every way. And it dominated our collective thoughts in such a way for so long. So then that was probably my first experience of feeling old when I talked, when you talk to young people and they're like, what 9/11 doesn't mean anything to me, and just,
doing the math right now, and it's maybe for people our generation, I think this might give a little perspective, but we were all closer in age to the first landing on the moon than kids born today are to 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, but it gives a little historical perspective. I mean, my parents, of course, remember where they were. My aunts and uncles remember where they were for the moonwalk. And that's just not a thing that exists in my brain. And
we don't care about that. Who gives a shit?
mean, I named my daughter Astra after the Apollo 1 motto, so I care, but no one else gives a shit.
You're weird.
I know, but no, but being serious, I think it's really crazy to think the way sort of the flow of time and the way that, perhaps the defining thing of all of our young adult lives is, it's going to be COVID or January 6th for this current generation. And it's really, I worry or hesitate to think what it's going to be 20 years from now.
I've thought about how people are going to teach about the pandemic. I'm very curious look, as we get older and we discover the
probably teaching into a fucking screen.
Well, yeah, maybe it won't be post pandemic is what you're saying. The only other thing I'll add is I've mentioned before, I went to school in Virginia, and going down there, it was interesting. My first 9/11 there, and understanding that someone who grew up in Michigan or someone who grew up in North Carolina, 9/11 doesn't hit as hard for them. So it was almost as if it felt more personal 9/11 as the years have gone by, this for what happened to us. My uncle, who has since passed away, but he was under a car because he lived in Midtown, and he was out getting a bagel and he was one of the people that went down to see what was happening at the towers and hid under a car after one of the collapses. My aunt was on her way into worked in one of the World Trades, but turned around and went home. My dad was on his way to, I think he was headed to Long Island City, but would have been across the water from everything. And I think there are so many people like that, lucky enough to say almost. And there's just, obviously we know far too many people that weren't so lucky that day. You mentioned going to Cal Ripken's last game. I had tickets to a Mets game that week that then got rescheduled to the last week of the season. And I remember walking into Shea Stadium and seeing the American garb everywhere, obviously, and the World Trade Center flag being flown in center field, but also being looking over your shoulder every pitch. Okay, what's happening? Are we allowed to be here? Are we allowed to go out and be safe again? And it's adding on to how we feel in 2021. It's a similar feeling in a way.
That you literally hit it on. You nailed it. All right. Well, we shall dedicate this episode to all the people who lost their lives in 9/11. And if you're listening to this and you were close to someone or knew someone who unfortunately falls into that camp, shout out to you. Our hearts go out to you. And never forget. As it were.
Never forget.
And on that note, smooth podcasting transition. Guys, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Oz, plug it. Let me hear you.
All right. So everyone,
let's hear how good you are at this, Oz.
Please subscribe, rate, review, final review. It's available wherever podcasts are found: Apple, Spotify, Overcast, wherever else. Please follow Final Review Pod on Twitter. Please follow me at Oz on Movies on Twitter. And it's in soft launch beta testing now, but launching October 1st is The Invention of Dreams, which is going to be a very interesting new way to engage with film writing. And perhaps some folks on this podcast right now will be involved in the future of that project.
I wonder who that could be, because it's definitely not me.
You're the media editor. So.
Exactly. So technically I am. Okay.
I'm excited.
I will just second everything Oz said. And just, to my Knicks family, thank you for all of the support so far. This has been pretty cool to kind of start from scratch with something. And, I think the fear, Oz, I don't know if you felt this, but the fear, the anticipation of day one and episode 1 drop, or even just the announcement of the pod. Once we announce it, now it's out of our hands. We can think it's great. We can think what we're working on is awesome. Now that it's out into the ether and to hear the positive feedback, it is really encouraging. And, episode 3 drops on Thursday. If you haven't, if you want to check out The Social Network or The Dark Knight, both episodes, but you want to watch the movie first, The Dark Knight, the entire Dark Knight trilogy is now playing on HBO Max. And I believe The Social Network is still on Netflix, if not on Peacock at the moment, Oz?
I know it's on Peacock at least.
Okay. Well, I apologize.
Awesome service that it is.
I was going to say, I apologize for making you go to Peacock, but you can watch the movie there and then come on over to our episodes. We will announce every show, at the end of every show, we play the score that is a hint for what the following week is. And if you miss it or haven't gotten to it yet, every Monday on our Twitter account, we drop a trailer for whatever movie we're doing that week. And the new episodes every Thursday.
And I'll just finish up by saying, I don't know how other people feel. Again, I'm very old and my habits reflect that. But like for me, starting a new podcast is like dating someone new. Back when I used to do such things, it takes a lot for me to actually download and hit play. And like, I'm going to give this thing a chance. If anybody else feels that way, I hear you. I obviously was always going to listen to your podcast because it's you guys. But I cannot say this strongly enough. If you have even literally any interest in movies or the history of movies, or you just like sitting and watching a movie, you're going to love this podcast. I can't recommend enough. Give it a shot. Final review. And of course, thanks for listening to this podcast, the Knicks Film School Podcast, where we continue to hopefully put out good conversations as we await. How many days till media day? Was it September 9th? As we just said, it was September 10th today. Media day, I think, is going to be the 28th. So we're like 2.5 weeks away.
We can do it, John. We can
do it. We're getting there.